Before we get into the podcast episode, I just want to remind you that this conversation, so anything I share or my guests share, is really just designed to inform and educate, get you thinking about your own health. It's not designed to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any disease, and in particular, any thyroid disease. If as a result of this conversation, you want to get something checked out, please do that with your own health professional. That's where you should be getting your individualized medical advice from. Having said that, I really hope you enjoy this conversation and that it really helps support and encourage you on your thyroid journey. Welcome to 2025. Let's Talk Thyroid. Listeners, Annabelle here. I just want to say a couple of things before we get into today's interview and really launch the podcast for the year. So thank you. Always have a bit of a break over the December, January, Australian summer holiday period. So getting back into the podcast. And there's a couple of changes that you might notice. I have basically upgraded my recording program for recording the podcast. And so you should, I haven't tried this out at the time of recording this intro, but you should be able to now look down and it will auto-generate different chapters. So you can kind of see the different topics that we're talking about and skip ahead or go back to find or re-listen to segments of the podcast that you find that you just want to re-listen to or miss something. So hopefully that will work and will make it easier for you to navigate through the podcast just by going into the show notes and clicking on those different links. So that is probably the biggest change. I'm going to stick with the plan that we had last year, which was I'm just going to put out the podcast episodes when I can. Last year it worked out to be around about every 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm just going to see how I go again this year. Still maintaining my other job 3 days a week, so we'll see how it plays out. I do want to let you know, just as a reminder, that if you haven't read my book yet, it is still available. Let's Talk Thyroid, it's called. Just like the name of the podcast, you can buy it. If you're in Australia, I'd love you to buy it directly from me via the Let's Talk Thyroid website, which is letstalkthyroid.com. Of course, if you're outside of Australia, the best place to buy it is Amazon. Or if you want the ebook version, buy that from Amazon as well. That really does help. Every sale of the book helps me to pay for things like upgrading the recording podcast software, hosting the podcast, sending out the emails, all those little costs of running the podcast. Every book that you buy, or if you decide to do the Kickstart program, or you want the one-on-one coaching with my KISS program, they definitely, when people take advantage of those resources that I have in a paid capacity, really does help provide the resources to fund the podcast. So big thank you to those of you that have done that. So if you've got any questions or any podcast topics or guests that you would like to see on the show, please just send me a message via social media or email me at letstalkthyroid@gmail.com. Open to different ideas. I've still got a list of topics and different guests that I would like to have on the show, but always open to more. Or if you've had a guest that you've loved and you'd like to hear more of or hear them on a slightly different topic, again, please let me know that. If you have a thyroid story of your own, you know that I love sharing thyroid stories on the podcast. So if you have your own story that you'd like to share, and just to encourage one another, and you don't have to have it all together. That's not the point of sharing your own stories. But if you've just got something to say that from your own experience that you think might help someone else, again, reach out to me. We can have a bit of a chat and see if it's a right fit for the podcast. So yeah, that's it. I am going to keep sharing in the Facebook group, Let's Talk Thyroid Community on Facebook. I might even start an X account. I haven't quite worked that one out yet. I probably should have a Let's Talk Thyroid X account. So when and if I do that, I will let you know. But I'm here to encourage you to continue to provide positive and practical thyroid information to really help you on your thyroid journey, particularly, I know many of us have been around for a long time, but if you are new, if you're newly diagnosed or just exploring your own thyroid health fairly recently, then big welcome to you. It can be a bit of a minefield and it can feel a bit overwhelming. So I always say just keep it super simple. Try to keep it one step at a time. And if you need help, reach out. I do have some resources that can help step you through how to tackle it and find out what your thyroid-friendly lifestyle is going to look like for you. So that's it for now. I'm going to leave you with the very first interview for the year, and I do have a couple of other interviews coming up pretty soon, so stay tuned for the next episodes. Welcome everyone back for 2025 to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. I'm really thrilled. This is the first one back, and it's going to be a fun exploration of metabolism, metabolic typing, how does that fit into thyroid health? And I'm sure we're going to go off into a few interesting little tangents, but I am joined today by Martin Pytela, who is a functional medicine expert and metabolic typing coach. He has a mission, a pretty big mission actually, to restore vitality to you and to the planet. So, no small missions for you, Martin.
Nope.
He's coached over 12,000 clients over the last, about 15 years, had 60,000 students enroll in his Udemy courses. He's a wealth of knowledge on far more than just metabolism, on a whole range of different health topics, from trauma, stress, anxiety, emotions, spirituality, longevity, mindfulness, gut health. Pretty much, I think we could pick any topic around health and Martin will be able to share some information on it. So welcome so much to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast, Martin.
It's a real pleasure. I'm so looking forward to this.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into this topic of metabolic typing, which I think I'd say I don't know a huge amount about, so I'm hoping that I'm going to understand it a little bit better, and maybe it'll tie into some things that we've already talked about on this show in other ways. I'd say that's the joy of a thyroid-specific podcast, is there's so many different elements to explore, but once you sort of get talking, you see how they all interconnect.
Well, it interacts very much. There are two parts to the metabolic typing.
Mm-hmm.
The basic premise is that genetics predetermine some parts of what we are or what we become. Epigenetics then unfolds it. So we have a lot of control over how the outcome is. But the basic tool, they call it, the gun is loaded with your genetics, but the epigenetics then pull the trigger. The metabolic typing is based on discovering two main things. There are more facets to it, but the two main ones are: what is your metabolic dominance? And much like you could be left-handed or right-handed, you could also be a dominant in the oxidative system or in the autonomic system. And here's what happens. You can alkalize or acidify a body. When you drift into alkalinity, you're a pleasant person, artsy, jovial, fun to be around, but tend to procrastinate, and in extreme get into despondence. And if it really gets really far in, then depression. Like, take the sheet, pull it over your head. I'm not getting out of bed today. Depression, bad. The acidity is a bit of a different creature. Wake up early, ready to go. No dawdling, no routine for let me get my coffee first and, no,
bang.
Lights on. But it comes with abrasiveness, lack of patience, impatience, and then just pushing people aside, elbows and cutting in traffic and interrupting others when they are too slow to finish their thought. However, it leads into anger. Road rage is a perfect expression of a person being overly acidic. And that's if it's externally pushed out. But if it's pushed inward, then anxiety. And that goes with probably catastrophizing some future event that hasn't happened yet, or reliving the past. I wish I did differently, or I wish I didn't at all, or this and that. All of those things, they dwell in the acidic extreme.
Okay.
And so we have some people that wake up acidic, some people that wake up alkaline. And if they do the wrong thing, they will become more alkaline or more acidic. So hit the extremes.
And
here's
can
how
you
it goes.
switch? Can you wake up one day alkaline and the next day acidic? Or is
Well,
that where you're saying you have a dominance on one side?
Yeah,
more
you
than the other?
probably do. We have found a few people being variable. Women are more likely in the luteal phase or up to the ovulation would be one type and post-ovulation of another.
Interesting.
Or some very rare, but it happens. Some people are one type in the morning and another type in the afternoon. And it's easily found. Like, here's what happens. The oxidizer is made more alkaline by fats and proteins and made more acidic by carbohydrates. And the autonomic is reversed. So let's go to a cocktail party. Let's watch people having snacks and drinks. The oxidizers with first drink become livelier, and with the second drink they become loud. With the third drink they start disagreeing with people really strongly, and with the fourth drink they probably pick a fight.
Okay.
And you cannot slow them down. They just keep going. The autonomics, they're alkalized by carbs. Alcohol is a carbohydrate.
Mm-hmm.
First drink, they become very friendly, jovial, jolly. Second drink, start oversharing, tell too much, just no controls. Third drink, start crying about stuff, just emotional, bawling and whatnot. Fourth drink, they probably fall asleep. They're totally non-dangerous. They end their binges falling asleep. The oxidizers, they don't end their binges. If they keep going, they keep going. So that's the main difference between the alkaline and the acidic.
So the acidic being the oxidizers and the alkaline being the autonomic.
No.
Okay. No. All right, I missed that.
No,
okay.
this is beautifully said. People would like it simple, but no, it's a vector.
Okay.
It's a vector. The oxidizer's vector is carbohydrates toward alkaline, and the autonomic, the vector is backwards. The carbohydrates are toward acidic. Did I say it backwards? I sure did. Okay. The autonomics will become more alkaline with carbs.
Yep. Okay.
And the oxidizers will become more alkaline with fats and proteins.
And are you saying there that, like, when you're talking about metabolic typing, that they're the two main different types?
Well, those are the two main categories. The other thing that a person will get back from doing the quiz that we offer is that we'll tell them what their endocrine dominance is.
Okay.
Which is, there are three main ones, and there's an extra one for ladies. And that's, you can be thyroid, adrenal, or pituitary dominant. And all men are driven by testosterone, and only some women are overdriving estrogen. And that's from the ovarian dominance.
Okay.
And that's
so
probably
they sit alongside, like you said, the oxidizers and the
well, so you can have a combination, right? Like you can be a thyroid dominant slow oxidizer, or you can be adrenal dominant, parasympathetic. Those are multiple choices, and some are easier to live with and others not so much. Let me explain.
Yeah.
So, for example, the thyroid type, I'm an example of that. Slender wrists, ankles, thin bones, tends to be quick, but don't have a good staying power. Like, make a sprinter, make a volleyball player, not a football player. Rugby, forget about it.
Okay, not a marathon runner.
Yeah, that's a different thing altogether, but definitely not that. I would definitely not do that. Yeah, sprinting maybe.
Yeah.
And the food temptations are fun. The thyroid type food temptation is carbohydrate. So
of course.
It could
you're
be
probably talking to all of us on this podcast.
No, well, yes, because it's the food, the kryptonite is the bakery. Right? You walk past the bakery and you need to find some way to convince yourself not to go in. Because if you go in, you buy too much and then you bring it home and you don't eat just one piece, you eat the whole thing. Now, that's the thyroid's temptation. Yeah. And the bad thing about it is that that's also how you gain weight. Thyroid types gain weight on starch.
Right. I'm definitely a thyroid type, but from what you've said, I would say.
Yeah. And so you can see that, right? Like when you look at your wrist, it's reasonably slender. Whereas the people who are the adrenal dominant, in men, they're built like the linebacker, the ultimate rugby player.
Okay.
Shoulders yay wide, chest yay deep, thighs like so.
Yeah.
Just big, strong. Chunky. And the ankles are not like this, they're like that.
Okay. And is that the same for women? Like
yes.
in that adrenal type?
Yeah.
Just more
like
solid.
For example, gymnasts more likely than not would be the adrenal type. Like if you can think of Christy, what was her name? Shawn Johnson, she'd be about in her 40s now.
Okay.
Or Simone Biles, recent Olympics.
Okay.
Short, squat, powerful, explosive strength, all of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, their kryptonite food is fat. They like fat and they like savory, and they gain weight on that.
Okay.
So, the proverbial, the keto diet, ketogenic diet, makes a thyroid dominant slim, makes an adrenal dominant fat.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I can see how that would make sense. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So then there's the third common one that's called pituitary. Those are usually the intellectuals, the nerds.
Okay.
They're usually built with a larger head, often curly hair.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
The body type is evenly covered with fat, like a Pillsbury Doughboy or a Cabbage Patch Doll. Kind of. The ankles and the knees and the thigh tend to be like one sort of solid mass, not like as shapely. Yeah, less definition, not easily obtained. And their temptation foods are fluffy, whipping cream, ice cream, those type of things. That's their go-to. And surprisingly, their health food is the high purine material. That would be all the organ meats. That would be the heart, tongue, liver, kidney, all the offal, and the red meats, the buffalo and the, I don't know what, goose and duck and hare, all the game food. That's their health food. They're the ultimate hunter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so before, and I know we're about to maybe go into that, the testosterone and the estrogen dominant. But can I just check, when we're talking about the thyroid, adrenal, pituitary, does that mean that so from a thyroid perspective, is there something about the thyroid health that makes you thyroid dominant in this metabolic type? Like, is it about having too much or not enough, or like what?
I think it's the other way around. I think once you're thyroid dominant, which happens to be one of the genetic choices, you're more dependent on having more thyroid support. So you will probably need way more iodine, probably by 1, maybe 2 orders of magnitude more than the hunter. I think most of the thyroid came from the coastal areas. Like you look at the Scandinavians, like the Swedes and the Danes and the Norwegians, they're all kind of volleyball player build, tall-ish, slender, long limbs.
So so they're drawing more on you, like their thyroid health is, their thyroid function is more important in a sense. It's important obviously to everyone, but it's more, whereas say for the adrenal type, the adrenals they're drawing more on the adrenals. Is that sort of what am I understanding?
For example, right? The thyroid type is quick, short twitch, fast, quick mind, but easily tired. And they don't do well with stimulants, like both you and I, then I mean, I certainly put my hand up. I can't handle coffee. It just is too much.
Yeah.
And even I remember one day after a evening show, I thought, what the heck, I'll just have a mochaccino, which is hot chocolate and coffee half and half. Well,
you're awake
that night I didn't go to sleep until 3 or something like that.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
Right? Just wide open.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think the last time I had coffee after lunchtime, which was probably about 15 years ago, that happened to me. I have a fairly low coffee
Yeah,
tolerance.
which is very typical. I can, if you come back from doing that quiz and you come back thyroid, I can say, please control your stimulants.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who's the adrenal dominant, they'll have 2-3 cups of coffee in the morning just to get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what. Whereas we'd be like, what? Yeah, well,
yeah, you'd be
wide and then flat. See, I've found I've given up coffee at different points. I've got to say I have been drinking coffee the last, it's probably 6 months or so, but I had a good year off, not that long ago, and yeah, instantly more energy as soon as I
it
stopped the
completely
coffee.
turns you on.
Yeah, which is sort of counterintuitive, isn't it? We think we need the stimulant of the coffee, but really, I did feel within only a couple of days had much more energy.
Oh yeah,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
So there's the careful management of the extremes, right?
Yes.
If you take a little bit, you'll be fine. If you take too much, you'll be in trouble.
And so I did cut you off before we got into the fourth category of the types. So maybe we round that out, and then I've got a few more things I want to dig into.
Yeah. So this last one is reserved for women alone. And it's called a gonadal or ovarian dominant, and it's stimulated by spicy food. Tabasco sauce, chili peppers, the Thai, the Mexican, the whatever. And when that lady takes a lot of that, or a girl usually, it stimulates the endocrine system such that there's more estrogen produced by the ovaries. And the secondary feminine characteristics are accentuated. So typically she'll end up with, from waist up, say size 2, from waist down size 6. Like she'll be
okay, that real pear shape,
bigger hips and bigger thighs, and typically most men like that sort of thing.
They're very curvaceous, and you're saying
Yes, supremely that. Like you look at, say, Jennifer Lopez, Kardashian takes it. Yeah, but Kardashian is done surgically. That's not natural.
Yeah.
But that's the model. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And with the 4 different types, is there a sense of, or you'd say, a dominant in one and have sort of a secondary dominance, or like a secondary?
I mean, you have all 3. You have all 3 or all 4, but it's always tilted in some direction. Like it's not. I mean, some of us are centered right over top of the middle, and have lots of choices. But do you want to be tempted by bakery, and by butchery, and by hunting, and by hot food?
That's a lot of temptation if you're in the middle, then, isn't it?
Well, yeah. And yes, all of us can do all of it. But the ultimate test is, what will you take after dinner? What will you be looking for? What are you craving? Be looking for to finish your day?
Are you going for the chocolate, or are you going for the chips, or that? Yeah. Okay. And so do then most people who have a thyroid condition like your Hashimoto's or Graves' or hyper, are most of us typically that thyroid metabolic type?
More often than not, definitely.
Okay.
However,
however,
easier to break in that department.
Okay. So given that that's then the vast majority of the people that are listening, if you're listening, I think you've mentioned, Martin, a quiz. Is that something that's available on your website, or? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll make sure we link.
Are we mentioning the actual URLs here in the talk, or?
Yeah, you can. Yep, that's fine. And I'll link them as well.
Yeah. The website that I have is called Life Enthusiast. And it was indeed done with the mission of helping people get better and fixing the planet in the process. That was the big mission. Yeah, I was thinking mission. I won't stop until about several million people have heard the message. Anyway, the quiz. It's called Metabolic Typing Test. It's about 120 multiple choice questions.
Okay.
And you pick, like, for example, when I eat a high protein breakfast, and then the choices will be: get feeling sleepy, get feeling agitated, get feeling nothing. And so some of these questions are physiological, like, my ears are more pink than the rest of my face. Or, look in the mirror, are your pupils tight, small, or are they wide open?
Okay.
We're asking which is dominant. Is it the sympathetic or parasympathetic? And then the other ones, is it the oxidizing or the...
Alkalizing.
Well, the oxidizer has certain preferences. The autonomic has certain preferences, and we will know. We will answer it, and we will pick you a spot on this matrix. Like if you visualize a sheet, you would want to be somewhere near the middle because that's where you have the most flexibility. But you could end up in any one of the four corners, and then you will have much less flexibility. So like, let's just imagine that this bottom part are the oxidizers. In this corner, you're waking up lazy. In this corner, you're waking up really busy or anxious or ADD. And we need to bring you closer to the middle. And so if you're the fast oxidizer, we need to push fats and proteins to get you to the middle. If you're a slow oxidizer, we need to push things like fruit salad or something like that to get you closer to the...
Okay, because we really want metabolic flexibility. That's the healthiest way for our body to be, is to be sort of in the middle of that graph, so that we've got, like as you say, we've got the ability to respond and react and come back to that sort of homeostasis. Is that part of what we're talking about?
But imagine you have a person who wakes up anxious, eats something, doesn't know why, and gets even more anxious. And then, for some reason, eats something very different and becomes depressed. And now you have bipolar swinging in and out, both extremes, and they could be related to how they're structuring their meals.
Okay. So for those of us who are in that thyroid quadrant, and probably a little bit more in that, whichever corner that is, that thyroid box, you've said before that generally we're better lower carb, higher protein and fat. Is that right?
To stay
slim. Okay.
So for example,
purely from a fat loss perspective.
I'll give you my example. Mine is not that easy to live with, which is I'm the sympathetic dominant, which means I wake up early and I'm quite short-tempered and I need to moderate myself with carbohydrates. So my intelligent breakfast would be start with a grapefruit and graduate to grapes and move it to apples and bananas. Right?
Okay.
Just slowly keep myself well. And then for lunch, it would be good for me to have a salad with not much protein, but some starch. Because if I don't take some starch, I will become argumentative.
Okay.
And you don't want me around like...
We don't want you being argumentative and grumpy. Is that what you're saying? So if you haven't had the starches, that you're more likely to become agitated.
So I can make myself totally anxious by overdoing fats. Like you leave me, I don't know, scooping some, I don't know, meats. Yeah, okay. A tray of charcuterie is, for me, is a sure trip to anxiety and hell.
Okay.
So anyway, however, being a thyroid type, I gain weight on starch and lose weight on fat. So I now have to fairly carefully balance the fatness and the happiness or the friendliness, because I'm friendly while gaining weight. Right?
Yes.
So now I have a fairly narrow band within which I operate. Whereas if you were like my wife, who is a parasympathetic dominant, so she's on the same vector as I am, but she's on the other side. She wakes up needing to eat steak.
That's, like for me, I feel good when I have steak and eggs for breakfast. That's I've learnt that about me. Whereas if I was to start with the grapefruit, banana, apple, grapes, that just sets me up to crave sweets for the rest of the day. Like I used to do say even a nice nutty muesli with some yogurt and fruit or a smoothie. But I've learned that if I do that, then I'm just craving sweets for the rest of the day.
This is a very good
discovery. If I start
discovery.
with the protein, I feel solid. I feel stable. My blood sugar feels stable. Yeah.
Yep, that's a great discovery because, of course, the craving is usually a reflection of what happened or didn't happen 12 hours earlier.
Uh-huh.
And so you are building a solid, slow burn base for the rest of the day by eating these slow energy release foods.
But you're saying that's a reflection of what had happened the night before.
No, not night, 12 hours.
12 hours, sorry. Well, 12 hours, yeah.
Okay, you have your breakfast, you have a decent amount of fat and protein. You will not be craving the stuff that you have
into the future.
missed later.
Yeah, that's certainly
so,
what I've found.
So here goes, right? If I did that as a sympathetic dominant, I would be very unpleasant to be around.
Okay.
But I would have no craving. So it's some of us are born with a challenge, some of us with a gift. So some people are happy to be on a keto diet and are staying slim that way. That would be the ideal for your audience if they're lucky enough. They are thyroid dominant, they're on the keto diet, and it makes them balanced.
So that's the condition, I suppose. So the keto or low carb may well suit the thyroid part, so long as it doesn't turn you into some sort of angry monster.
Well, that's the metabolic dominance. That's the metabolic dominance that if you're lucky enough, then you're harmonized. If you're not so lucky, then you have a narrow gantry to deal with.
Okay. So then for each of the different types, as you were saying before, there are perhaps a diet preference with provisos depending on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's say this. Nobody should eat refined flour, refined sugar, refined salt, refined plant seed oils, and pasteurized homogenized dairy. Just don't.
Okay. Yeah.
So that
blanket
aside,
everyone.
everyone.
Yeah.
That aside, then you can choose pasture-raised meats or free-range chickens or fresh-caught fish. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that, as you say, that's your good general health advice, isn't it? I mean, really, anyway, that's a whole different conversation, isn't it?
I still talk to people who say, do you think that organic is worth it?
Yeah.
Yes, man, it is worth it.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can just touch on, I think one of the things, we might be thyroid dominant, but as you said, like your wife is perhaps different, or perhaps those of us that are thyroid dominant may live with a pituitary dominant spouse, or something like that. So, which I imagine, if you're really trying to eat for the different types, could create challenges in the kitchen.
Well, let me talk about that for a sec. So, for example, my wife and I have really bizarre eating differences. So we make a salad. That's the center, but we both can agree on. I'll have it with a piece of fish and maybe a little bit of rice. And she'll have it with a piece of steak.
Okay. So if the keto style diet is, I don't know, maybe the base or the preference or the something for the thyroid dominant type, what would be the base dietary approach, at least just, from the adrenal and then the pituitary?
Yeah, okay. Well, the adrenal dominant people need to find a way to eat light. So if they want to stay slim, they need to stay away from high amounts of fat. So that would be salads, most likely, or skim the fat. Don't leave it in. For the thyroid dominant, it's, oh, please leave it in. Do not dare to skim the fat off my chicken soup. Whereas for them, it's a weight gain program. So it's the main reason is the main issue is, do you want to gain weight or not? If you're fine, then you're doing perfectly well.
Yeah. Which I suppose comes back to that metabolic flexibility, because if you're not, overweight, or I guess potentially underweight, then you are you're more metabolically flexible. So you can dive into the different, you've got more flexibility. Whereas if you're not, then you've got to be perhaps a little bit more mindful.
Yeah, some people are more stable and some are less stable. To give an analogy, more sumo wrestlers' stance. Feet wide apart, center of gravity down. I will be very hard to knock out of balance. But
Yep.
if I'll stand on one foot with my eyes closed, it will take one finger and you push me over. In that sense, some of us will take just a small difference. A spoonful of olive oil is all the fat one person needs, whereas another one can just pour it on and not worry about a thing.
You've mentioned the quiz and sounds very comprehensive at like 120 odd questions. Is that that's sort of trying to identify based on your own experiences and perceptions as to then where you fit? Is that right? Is that sort of how you would say that you would identify what metabolic type is your
Right. Well, it's based
dominant
actually
one?
it's based on research. Back when they were still developing it, they would measure the venous blood and the pH shift of the blood that followed.
Okay.
So they would have somebody eat a meal. Let's just say, let's do a protein challenge, which would be, I don't know, a piece of steak, an omelet with sausage on top, and then measure what happens.
Okay.
And you're either alkalizing from it or acidifying from it.
Yeah.
And then we'll do a glucose challenge. The opposite.
And can you still do those sorts of, I mean, if someone's listening and think, oh, well, I wanted to actually go to my doctor or functional health practitioner and ask for those types of tests, can you still do that type of thing? Like, is that something the average person can
you
do?
Can, but why would you spend that money? Here we're charging $97, ask you enough questions to know the answer and the outcome. Sure, you can pursue it to the bitter end.
Yeah, but what's the point? Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay. And so, for the, I guess for your average thyroid patient that, could be listening, not that you're average, but, for your typical kind of
let's
thyroid
talk about
patient, is there anything else we should be aware of?
Once you can self-identify as the thyroid dominant, which is you have slender limbs, ankles and wrists, you start gaining weight, it starts on the belly and adds to the hips, you're tempted by starchy foods, then you need to know that you should always have a good supply of iodine. It's probably 10 to 15 times more than the others. So when they tell you...
It's one of those tricky things, isn't it? I mean, there's such different things in the thyroid world around iodine that it can trigger Hashimoto's. It sounds like it's the Goldilocks thing, like not enough, too much. Yeah.
Well, it's easily determined, right? You can check your morning temperature. This goes back to time, I don't know, Stone Age? I don't know that.
Your basal body temperature.
The first thing in the morning as you wake up, this method used to be used for checking for ovulation. Right?
Yep.
And it still works. Anyway, you check your morning temperature. If you're below 98, or in Celsius, that would be 36.8. So if you're below that, you're underheating. If you're above that, you're overheating. So first thing in the morning, before you get out of bed, check your temperature, write it down, get on with your day. And then if you are cold, like we have people who are 1, 2, 3 degrees below.
Right.
So they are underfeeding their metabolic furnace. So we say, look, just find a way to supplement this. You can go natural, kelp, dulse, bladderwrack, Irish moss, all of those beautiful seaweeds. There's lots of it out there. Befriend a Japanese restaurant owner and eat there a lot.
Some nori, some seaweed,
Yeah. Wakame salad is a good base for anybody's lunch.
Yeah.
All that.
So you would say that if your basal body temperature is low, that's a sign that you don't have enough iodine.
Absolutely. Certified.
Whereas if it was over, then you would not need to supplement with iodine.
No, you should worry about where it's coming from because you need to bring it back.
Bring it down. So that's the finding the Goldilocks amount.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's individual and it's determinable. Every one of us can indeed go and figure it out for ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So
now, the other concern was the Hashimoto's Graves dilemma, where Graves is overperforming, Hashimoto's underperforming more commonly. And it's allegedly tied to an autoimmune issue,
Mm-hmm.
which some people will tell you that this is caused by the Epstein-Barr virus.
Oh, yes. I've heard that as one of the triggers. Yep.
Yeah, there's a fellow in the U.S. Goes by the medical medium moniker.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes out, talks about how Epstein-Barr has 6 of its versions and how some of it gets into your thyroid and starts wrecking it. Anyway.
Do you agree with that, or doesn't sound like...
I have no evidence to argue with it or not.
Yeah.
Other than I have experienced it myself. I've had Epstein-Barr as a 15-year-old, and I have had thyroid trouble ever since.
Okay.
So look at my eyebrows.
Yeah.
They start over in the middle.
Well, I've actually got a bit of...
You have them somewhat painted in, but you're a right eyebrow.
I was going to say, a little bit, but...
right
the outer is definitely...
decidedly thinner.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that's where I come with that. Also, the other thing that you'll get is the hair on your legs is going to start disappearing.
Yeah, all these random things.
Happens. Pardon me?
All these random, so not random, but it is interesting, all these different symptoms when, hair falling out, the outside of the eyebrows. I haven't heard about the hair disappearing on your legs. I haven't...
I haven't in women, in the industrialized societies, they tend to be shaven, so you don't know.
Yeah, maybe you don't notice so much.
Other than you have less to worry about.
Yeah, less to worry about. I just thought that was an aging thing, but maybe that's my thyroid.
Yeah, it's a bonus.
Yeah.
But it's a witness to the thyroid not doing so well.
Yeah.
And then, so some of the symptoms, right? Hard to keep with temperature changes. Don't like heat, don't like cold. Sometimes both. A scant perspiration. Not easy to get. Like start exercising, you should be sweating fairly quickly. Poor thyroid performers don't do well. They hardly ever sweat.
Okay.
So again, you may think it's an advantage, but no, it's actually a sign of trouble.
Yeah.
And then waking up with puffy eyelids, right? Like I don't know, both sides. And then swollen tongue if it really gets big.
Yeah.
And then, of course, pregnancies. Iodine is supremely important in helping to carry the pregnancy to term. If you have deficiencies, women miscarry mainly because of iodine deficiency.
Okay.
The second main reason would be wheat intolerance.
Wow.
Gluten trouble. Women who are having a hard time, not just conceiving is not the biggest problem, making it last.
Okay.
Like having the, what does the egg do? There's a word for it. It needs to somehow nest in the uterus itself.
Yeah.
I forget the exact medical term for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's making the pregnancy last.
Yeah.
Will be a gluten problem also.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. So I suppose if you were celiac or didn't know you were celiac, you could really have a lot of issues with miscarriage and...
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. And that, there is a big correlation between your Hashimoto's and celiac.
Yeah, there is also, correct.
Interesting. So you were saying before when we were then talking about the iodine, about the autoimmune element of it. Was there anything else you were wanting to say around the autoimmune element of thyroid? They may not have.
The story goes that if you have Hashimoto's, be careful with iodine. There are 2 forms on the market. The typical Lugol's tincture, which is iodine mixed with potassium iodide, 5% each. And then there's the other one called nascent iodine, which is also known as detoxified or electrified, or the Edgar Cayce recipe iodine, which is atomic and less toxic.
Okay.
That's the one I would recommend to anyone who has autoimmune concerns.
Okay. And then from that, triggering the autoimmune, you were saying that EBV is sort of often a common trigger or cause. I mean, depending on which way you look at how an autoimmune disease comes about.
Yes, exactly. That. Well, I would say it this way. I think that the industrial age, the industrial society that we live in
Mm-hmm.
is causing a higher level of environmental toxicity, especially heavy metals, which would be lead, cadmium, mercury, other things, arsenic probably, and then the volatile organic compounds, which would be dry cleaning fluid and gasoline and whatever else. The aromatic things, which
that's
the things that really get to me are the artificial fragrances.
I can't tolerate them at
No,
all.
they make things worse, right? And so that, and then now the Teflon, the forever chemicals, which are on the retail receipts, and they are on the non-press shirts and clothing and furniture and all kinds of places. Like you wouldn't expect it, and there it is.
Yeah, I didn't know that with the iron-free shirts. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's PFOAs, whatever that means.
I didn't realize they were in clothing. Yes, I do. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's in there.
Interesting. Okay.
Anyway, rising
So
level
all
of
those
toxicity,
toxins.
right? All of this is making the bucket that we have fuller. And so we need to empty it so that we have more carrying capacity. Because if you're, the analogy, right? If I'm up to here, we're still having a conversation. If I'm up to here, I'm having to.
Yeah.
And if I'm up to here, I'm having to start to hop up to take a breath. And if it's up to here, I'm done.
Done. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens to people. They go into a flare, which fibromyalgia is one of those things, the grab bag of everything, sore bodies, chronic fatigue, and many other things.
Yeah. 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 It's just coming back to that idea of metabolic flexibility, I suppose, if when it sort of fits into that whole gamut, if we're, as you say, our bodies have got to cope with this much toxicity and this much, then we can't cope. Our bodies can't detoxify properly. And, then we've got much less general health flexibility.
This has been the focus for us with Life Enthusiast, where I have developed protocols to help people detoxify and get rid of the industrial toxins and get rid of the metabolic toxins, and then return the inner terrain, the what are they called? Microbiome, let's call it that. All the microbes living within, they need to have the proper mix, and we need to heal the gut that has been damaged. And then some people have mitochondrial or metabolic problem where they don't convert food into energy well. We need to help with that. Otherwise you have fatigue.
Yeah. It's just a whole body, multi-system path forward, isn't it? You can't just, that's what I love about functional medicine, and is taking a holistic approach. And the thing that I've found, just even looking through a thyroid lens, is that every cell of your body needs thyroid hormone to function. And so it is a whole body issue. So it's forced me, from my perspective, to look at that holistic health.
Yeah.
It's not just about taking thyroid hormone replacement. It's about managing toxicity levels and stress levels and gut health and all those things. And I think if I had lost a hand, for example, or had some other kind of health issue to deal with, it may not have forced me to look as holistically at my own health as having a thyroid condition, which does impact everything. So it's forced me to really look at this holistic approach. And so I like what you're saying, is it's not just one thing, it's everything.
Yeah, I usually put it together as toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. And the toxicity we talked about a bit, all the industrial age stuff that's in the environment that doesn't belong within. And then malnutrition, we have a serious problem because the industrial agriculture is growing foods that look good, but they're not really well mineralized and they're nutritionally hollow. And especially the temptation foods, the snacky foods, the pizza and then the chips and all of this and that. Those are all mostly calories with very little nutrition with it. Nutrient poor, calorie rich. We really have to watch that, especially the thyroid type.
So I think that sort of ties a little bit into the organic, not organic, that argument as well.
For sure. Yeah.
Because it's the nutritional density. You're actually getting more nutrients that way.
Right. And then the stagnation, that's the lack of movement of the lymphatic system.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you don't exercise, then your muscles are not stressing your bones. So your bones are getting weaker. If you don't move against gravity, at least walking, then your lymphatic system stagnates. Mm-hmm. And then you should, of course, be pumping it, massaging it all the time. Dry skin brushing is an awesome tool.
Oh, yeah. I'd forgotten about that. Yep.
Yeah. So you want to move this stuff, because if it doesn't move, it stagnates. And if it stagnates, it putrefies. And if it putrefies, you're going to stink. Smelly feet and smelly crotches they accompany stagnant lymphatic system.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And while we're talking about movement then, like, are there particular types of exercise that go along with those different metabolic types, or like?
Well, the lymph itself, these are little channels with little flaps, and what you need to do is move up and down against gravity. And walking or running is the best thing we know.
Okay, for that lymphatic movement.
Yep. Because if you could visualize,
that kind of you can do the bouncing on the thing as well.
Oh yeah, I mean,
rebounder, like you say, you were a fan of a rebounder?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. That's what I have here. That's my substitute for having time to go walking. I get on the rebounder and I bounce. Okay. And you can have also one of these sort of things. This is
a bounce fitness
ball that you can sit on and just
just bounce, just go up and down.
Yeah.
So that's good for just that lymphatic movement. Yeah. And are there other, so generally just moving and walking, I mean, but more broadly, I suppose, Martin, is there anything from a movement exercise and a thyroid metabolic type that we should, I know you mentioned before, we're more likely to be the sprinters as opposed to the longer forms of exercise, but is there anything we should be doing to make it, I don't know, from an exercise point of view, you think we should know about?
Well, it's called interval training. Do you know those terms?
Yeah, the HIIT training. Well, high intensity, or just interval training?
Well, interval training is you give yourself as few reps as possible to get you to not be able to do another one.
Right.
So meaning, let's just say pick a weight. I'll pick 25-pound curl and I'll just do that. And I should be finished at 10. I should not be able to do an 11th.
Okay.
And then I set it down and I breathe it out and do it again. And then I do a short sprint, right? Like 30 seconds of sprint all the way to panting. And then let it go, breathe it out.
Okay.
And you only need 10, 12 minutes of that in a day.
Yeah. Okay.
To make it go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that, short bursts. Well, that fits then, short doesn't burst, it, with that short burst? Sprint. Yeah. Okay. I think before you were about to grab something you were going to show me. Is there a little roller or something like that?
Oh yeah, no, I was picking up the bottle and I was going to just show that when you shake it like this, the fluid in it, this was going to be a substitute for a drink mixer in a bar. Is that when the thing travels down, the fluid remains and hits the top. And when this travels up, the fluid goes with it.
Okay.
So that's the analogy for the system getting circulation movement by walking up, down against gravity.
Yeah. And you can see how that would work.
This bottle is of a product called Nanosoma, which comes from an Australian company of all things.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's an awesome metabolic tool because it helps to normalize all the receptor sites on every cell. Of course, every cell does have an iodine receptor site and a vitamin D site and vitamin C and many others. There are, I think, 48. And they get normalized, optimized, which is...
What did you say it was called?
It's called Nanosoma. Nanosoma.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that.
Right. No, not you should not be having heard of everything these days.
Well, I know. Well, and I think sometimes you can hear about so many things, they don't all stick, do they? Um, yeah. So, Martin, I mean, there's been a really interesting conversation. I know we've kind of, gone off in a few
We're a bit all
little
over the place.
twists and turns. And so hopefully those of you that are listening can kind of pick up little things and then go and do some more looking at it, and perhaps go to Martin's website and have a look at the
Yeah,
quiz.
I want to
Yeah.
bracket this in. I'm a random organizer. I do not have to have my files alphabetic, and I do not have to have things in one place. But I have an assistant who is an extreme left-brainer, sequential from beginning to end. And we're having the most amazing time because I can pick up any topic, any place, any time. But she says, no, let's start at A and work it down.
Well, that sounds like an interesting working relationship.
Well, it's challenging me to be able to be flexible for others, right? Like I want to be flexible with others because not everybody's a random organizer.
Yeah, I haven't heard that term, random organizer, but I can probably relate in the sense that I can have a bit of a mess around me, but I know exactly where everything is.
Exactly that.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a friend who has to have a clean desk and 3 file folders and alphabetically organized.
Okay, that's not me. Yeah, interesting. Right. That would probably be my husband, though, I would say. Yeah. So, Martin, is there anything else? I mean, I know there's a lot. You're a wealth of knowledge and experience, but in terms of this sort of tying it back into, thyroid health, metabolic typing, is there anything else you think we need to know?
Yeah. And so if I'm talking to somebody who's thyroid dominant with health challenges, I would be saying, well, look, start at the beginning. Your hypothalamus talks to your pituitary, which talks to your thyroid. That there's a cascade of signaling. If your what is it called? TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. If that is high, that means that your thyroid is not responding correctly. The person controlling it is yelling too loud. Now, why is that? And then many people supplement with T4, levothyroxine, which is the inactive form of the thyroid hormone. But you may be a poor T4 to T3 converter. And if you're a poor converter, no matter how much iodine you pile in, you're still feeling tired. You're still not working well. So you need to figure out why that is. And you may be supplementing probably with thyroid tissue, animal thyroid gland.
Yeah, the desiccated
pork, beef,
thyroid.
something. So those are the crutches we use. For the most part, I use the iodine tincture that I mentioned, the detoxified iodine. They tell you, well, take 1 drop, 2 drop. The American RDA, 150 micrograms. I take 2,000 micrograms every day.
Oh, right. Wow. Okay.
And I'm fine, thank you. And I have taken, that's about 8 drops. I've taken 100 drops to see what happens.
Wow.
I'm an open experiment.
Yeah. Experiment of one. Yeah, I get that.
Of one. And what was interesting about it, I mean, it was not intentional. I was opening, I wanted to pull the lid out of the bottle, and I was using my teeth to do it because it wasn't.
Okay.
As I yanked on it, the whole thing went in my mouth.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, it was a big gulp of iodine tincture. And for the next 3 days, I was decidedly warm.
That's interesting. Okay. So it really.
And also, what's interesting, I used to be cold at night. Now, once I upped the dosage, I'm perfectly comfortable. I can walk out into the snow barefoot. I mean, I'm not going to be loving it, but I can do it.
Yeah. Whereas,
previously, no go.
No, I was going to say a lot of thyroid people have cold feet and cold extremities.
And likewise with tropics, right? Like I used to hate being in anything that's over 28 centigrade or whatever.
Yeah.
You're probably metric, right?
Yeah, we are metric, and well over 28 degrees at the moment.
Right.
It's very hot here.
So it would be too much for me. These days, I'm fine. I couldn't care less.
Yeah, well, you've got that balance back.
Well, you train your thyroid to actually be responsive.
Yeah. So I think that's what you're saying is you're going back to getting your thyroid to work again, as opposed to just I don't know, just hobble around like a crippled soldier. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I think you've given us lots to think about. Is there anything else that you would like to say to wrap it up? Anything that you'd like the audience to know? And
Well,
then,
my
please do
routine,
give
I mean,
yourself a plug.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, I have been a poor thyroid example. I'll tell you a quick little story.
Mm-hmm.
My mother survived the concentration camp experience.
Wow.
She was, out of the 55 people from her immediate family, or whatever you call that, well, family,
Yep.
2 came back.
Wow.
53 died.
Wow.
And she was an extreme hypothyroid performer.
Well, that's interesting.
She would eat tiniest portions for the rest of her life.
And did she remain very hypothyroid then?
Well, she was hypothyroid. And I think she survived that experience of very low calorie for a very long time because her metabolism was just so slow.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking maybe we hypothyroid people are genetically selected by times of famine because the survivors of famines are the hypothyroid people.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my N of 1 theory.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
it
think
makes sense. I mean, we've probably got a little bit more stored energy and we're going to go burn through it much slower than someone with a faster metabolism.
Right. So that's my story on that.
Yeah.
So consider it a gift of your ancestors, because if a famine should come, you'll survive it.
Yeah. Well, yes, there you go. There's a positive note to end on. Martin, I mean, I'll put the links to your social media and your website, but is there any ways if people wanted to work with you or do the quiz, like what's your offering there? Like if people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, the website is life-enthusiast.com. And Metabolic Typing, if you type the word metabolic into the search box, it'll show up. And we have pages and pages and interviews and talks where we try to explain this in greater detail. And we have a calendar booking there on the website. We offer a health coach session. I have several people working with me, all qualified, and we offer a 15-minute consultation for free. Or we offer a consultation, the first 15 minutes are free.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
most times people just are finished by then.
Okay. Well, that's really good. If people are curious, they want to know more. I know in the lead up to this, I listened, to bits of a few of your different talks, on this different topic just to get a little bit of a feel for it. So there's you've got a lot of information available. So if you're listening and you think this is really, I'm curious, I want to understand this a little bit better, this is hopefully just whet your appetite and you can go to Martin's resources because there's a lot there.
We have not touched on 20 other chapters. We do manufacture our own superfoods. We're really specialized in that, and we know a lot about it.
Okay.
We didn't talk about trauma. I'm also a clinical hypnotherapist. Not that I want to practice it on the screen, but I at least understand the concepts and can help people direct where they are headed.
Okay.
Trauma is a major issue that we didn't talk about, but it's making everything worse if it's not dealt with. So all of that.
Hopefully whetting people's appetites, to give them something to go away and think a bit more about or change or try. I always say on this show, there's always something from a podcast interview, that you can take away, and there'll be, at least one or two people that I think, wow, I really needed to hear that today. I always think if that's you, go away and do what you need to do, take the action, do the investigation. We've all got to take that personal responsibility for managing our own health and figuring out what our N of 1 really is for us. Yeah. So I thought that was a good tie into. So thank you, Martin. Thank you for your time. And really enjoyed this conversation today.
Thank you, Annabelle. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. If you have enjoyed the content, or perhaps you're thinking, oh, my mum needs to hear this, or my sister or my bestie, I would love it if you would share this episode with them. That really just helps spread the positive and practical message of Let's Talk Thyroid, and helps that broader thyroid community, our friends and family, to live well with their thyroid health. So you can just share the episode. If you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast, it's free. It's really helpful because then you'll be notified every time a new podcast comes out, and it just makes it much easier to find. There's usually a little subscribe button or a bell, or follow often is the terminology. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be helpful. Of course, if you want to leave a review, even better, just a sentence or two about how the podcast has helped you. You can definitely connect with me via letstalkthyroid.com. That's where you'll find access to my book, my coaching, my freebies, and really everything that I offer in terms of thyroid support. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.